What's up, everyone? Today, I want to talk about something that most people vaguely know about. They've heard the term, it gets tossed around quite a lot in the community, but they don't really truly understand what it is. And what I'm talking about is your fight or flight system, your freeze system, or better known as the sympathetic nervous system. But most people don't truly understand what this is and what it's doing inside them and what it controls day after day after day, and for some people, after day after day after day. And that's what we want to avoid. When you're in burnout, the sympathetic system often becomes more than a temporary state. It becomes a baseline, and that can be dangerous. It's what I like to call the Undertaker when it's chronically activated, but it's also the system that's helped you survive things. So it does have a purpose, and understanding how it works is the first step to getting free. So what is the sympathetic nervous system anyway? Well, it's part of what we call the autonomic nervous system, which is part of your body that runs things that you don't need to think about, like your heartbeat, breathing, sometimes, how fast your gut digests, how alert you are, etc. Its job is to put you in go mode when there's danger, stress, or when you need to act fast. It dilates your pupils, speeds up your heart, sends blood to your muscles, slows down your digestion. All of these things are useful, but when you have to run, fight, lift, escape, you really don't need to be digesting food. And so a lot of these internal systems get shut down when we're stuck in the sympathetic. And that can obviously be a problem long term. You can think of the sympathetic nervous system like a bandwidth slider. On one end, there's alert, engaged, and prepared for action. That's good. That's adaptive. We want that. But as you push the slider farther, you get stress, pressure, overwhelm, and sometimes that can help. When you have deadlines or emergencies or even a crisis response, you want to be able to activate that. But the problem and the trouble is when people stay on that far end, constantly on high stress, constantly on alert, when that slider never comes back down, that's chronic sympathetic activation, and that's where burnout begins to creep in. And that can happen for a multitude of reasons. Modern life keeps triggering this system. Constant notifications on our phones, deadlines, emotional overload, society, news, comparison, pressure, all sorts of things can keep us and activate the tail end of that sympathetic nervous system. And your brain begins to learn that being on is safer than slowing down, which is kind of a paradox. But the familiar stress becomes the comfort zone. And like we said, it's not all bad. We need the sympathetic nervous system. It's essential for things like reacting in danger or emergencies, physical activity and exertion, like when you want to go to the gym or you want to jog, or even surviving acute stress. But sometimes it can get stuck. And when it gets stuck, that's when it causes the problems. But without it, many good things wouldn't happen. And the body is meant to balance. So we're supposed to use the sympathetic nervous system when it's needed, and then we rest and we repair and we restore via something called the parasympathetic nervous system. But we'll get into that in another video. When the sympathetic nervous system is turned on for too long, you can feel anxious, wired, jittery, and even when there's no threat present, your sleep can suffer, your digestion slows, your hormones get out of whack, your immune function weakens, brain fog sets in, overwhelm. All of these thoughts begin to pile up. I need more work. I need to get things done. I don't deserve rest. I'll rest after I finish this. And that resistance arises because your brain tries to keep you in what it knows, even if it's hurting you. But once you understand those thoughts, that the resistance is just part of an ancient safety mechanism and it's not your fault, you can start to work through them and with them to deactivate. And what Back to Baseline is about at its core is giving you the tools to understand that you can turn the slider down. You can shift from sympathetic activation into parasympathetic safely, so you can begin to build, rest, heal, and eventually grow in ways that stick. So if this resonated, I want you to reflect. What's one short thing you can do today to ease the sympathetic activation? Something that you can do for 5 minutes. Breathing, walking, putting your phone down. Drop that below in the comments, because this group isn't about judging. We're about understanding and supporting. And understanding how the sympathetic nervous system works is key to unlocking freedom from burnout.